Good afternoon, everyone. Weather Channel now admitting global cooling will last for 50 years. Now that they have a benchmark which they can better perform climate model simulations because of decreased solar UV. For example, Greenland and Alaska were warmer during the last grand solar minimums, just like we see today's temperatures above with the Maunder minimum matchup. And even NOAA's own admission, CO2 trails temperature, and they still haven't figured out why there's a pause. Plant food does not change our climate. And something new, an ice music festival. And while you're watching the video, please remember to subscribe to Adapt 2030 and click that bell so you can get the latest updates. And while a plethora of news articles and commentators were saying that there were no peer-reviewed articles stating that global warming was not caused by CO2, they seem to have overlooked even the ones that were out in 2013. Let's do a blast from the past. Global warming pause may last for 20 more years as Arctic sea ice starts to recover. Professor Judith Curry, peer-reviewed Journal of Climatic Dynamics, Georgia Institute of Technology. That somehow slipped through the cracks. And while all the predictive analysis of the IPCC said we would warm by another 0.07 by 2030, this is not happening. We're still in the pause. And now, the Weather Channel, I don't know whether they're doing damage control or getting your mind prepared for what's about to happen. They just stated that this global cooling will last for another 50 years. And they're even admitting now that they have just taken into consideration solar UV forcing so they can get a better climatic model simulation. Unbelievable. I thought everything was already accounted for, that the science was settled. They were going to put a global tax in, and now they're just even starting to understand the effects of UV decrease on our climate system. Now back to the Judith Curry article. This graph shows the pause. But the darker red and above in the 15, 15.5, 16, 16.5 degree defunct IPCC climate models don't reflect reality at all. I don't even know why we're still listening to their predictions of gloom and doom of warming when we should be talking about what's going to happen when our planet cools for the next several decades. And the Weather Channel article even admits it. The sun periodically goes through a time of diminished magnetism called a grand solar minimum. They talk about the last time it happened in the 17th century. And they even reference, for example, Greenland and Alaska warmed significantly during the grand solar minimum. And we just need to look at today's departure from normal temperatures, and you'll see right over Alaska at the top, warmer than average. At the bottom, the Maunder minimum temperature reconstruction. So I'm just going to talk here for a second and let your eyes jump from top to bottom and see how it matches up. And if we take a step back into Maunder minimum bottom, you're going to see how Asia cooled significantly. Wait a second, record-breaking extreme cold in Northeast Asia, including China and Japan, breaking all snow records, all cold records, animals freezing while they're walking, yet nobody's putting two and two together. By the way, CO2 is plant food. 450 parts per million, same day equivalent of 14 days of growth at 1270 parts per million, your yield increases. And another fact misstated time and time again in the media, CO2 does not lead temperature. CO2 trails temperature. This is even from NOAA's own CO2 change versus temperature 1970 to 2015. In other words, it's not the CO2 causing the temperature to change. The temperature moves first and then the CO2 follows. But keeping on a lighter note, let's talk about the coolest sounds in music, Norway's Ice Instrumental Festival. I left all the links below. You can check out the festival yourself, hear the sounds of what these ice instruments sound like. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for your time. They're in damage control because the Earth's climate is changing and they have to make excuses because they've told you for 40 years it's going to get hot and suddenly it's getting cold and they're thinking, uh-oh, people are going to remember what we said for the last 30, 40 years. We better start mixing up the information and confuse everybody while they can try to make a clean getaway out of Dodge.